Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. It is time for the War on Gaza report. That's right. Today, Israel's war on Gaza has reached day 221. Day 221. And as always, we're going to give you the latest updates. We're going to give you the most important information. We're going to give you the biggest developments. All of it is stuff that mainstream media doesn't want you to get. It's stuff that corporate outlets don't want you to have. We do it anyway because that is the only way we can end this genocidal war. It's to put a spotlight on the misery, to put a spotlight on the suffering, to highlight all of the things that are happening that, again, the world would rather you not know. In the meantime, I want to shout out Francesca Martinez, who just joined and became an official YouTube channel member. We appreciate you. We love you. Welcome to the channel. Everybody send her a shout out. Also, Venetia David just gifted a membership for people. So again, thank you so much, Venetia. We appreciate your generosity and your love. Everybody, let's get right to it because we want to go right from here, right over to night school. We begin with the numbers, as we always do. At least 35,173 people have been killed, and 79,061 people have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. The death toll in Israel from Hamas's October 7th attacks, it stands at 1,131, with dozens of people still held captive. People say, why do you always mention the 1,139 people who died in Israel from Hamas's attacks? I do it for a couple of reasons. One, we're giving death tolls for a quote-unquote war. That means we have to tell the numbers on both sides. There's no getting around that. That's just a fact. That's just what we do. Let's be honest. It's also important because the death toll of people in Israel has changed multiple times from October 7th to November to December. It's been stable for much of 2024, but we want to remind people of the actual number and not the incorrect number, similar to what we would say and do for what's happening in Gaza. It's also important for people to understand proportionality. The war in Gaza in terms of the death toll has 1,139 people on one side and more than 35,000 people on the other side. That is an obscene and absurd number. We just got to deal with it. We got to be honest about that. All right. And so it's not a juxtaposition as if to say this many people died over here and this many people died over there, because war is more complicated than that. But there is a moment at some point where you just got to say, look, this is nowhere near proportional. We have to be honest about that. And one of the reasons why that's happening is because the death toll in Palestine keeps rising and the pace of death continues unabated. In the last 24 hours, 82 Palestinians have been killed. 82 Palestinians have been killed. That's the highest death toll in a single day in many, many weeks. Now, again, number's been high, but 82 in one day, in 24 hours, is stunning. And the reason these numbers spike that high is when the Israeli air attacks are intense. You know, when you see people dying of starvation or of dehydration, when you see people dying under the famine, when you see children tragically dying, the numbers are high and they're awful. When you see people, you know, being shot during a shooting of a house, shooting up of a refugee camp or a house, when the tanks and the troops roll into places, the numbers are high. But when you have the relentless air attacks that we just witnessed, that's when they get nuts. That's when they get nuts. And 82 Palestinians killed in 24 hours is indefensible and disturbing. Let's talk about what else has happened. There have been fierce gun battles raging in northern Gaza, specifically in Jabalia. And we talked about Jabalia last night, as well as in the south, in Rafah. And the reason is because Israeli military incursions are intensifying against the various sort of groups of armed Palestinians, whether it's Hamas or one of the offshoots of Hamas or one of the affiliate groups of Hamas. And so there have been significant casualties on both sides. but we're seeing a level of disruption both in the north and the south that, again, we haven't seen in a long time. Right now, more than 450,000 Palestinians have fled Rafah, with another 100,000 evacuating the north. These evacuations are a direct result of the violence I just described. In Rafah, of course, Netanyahu has been targeting that city for a long time. In Rafah, we see tanks and troops rolling in. We see people dying, beginning to die at higher rates. And you see a lot of people leaving. Now, again, there were 1.5, the numbers, as I keep saying, went from 250,000 to 1.5 million in Rafah in a quick amount of time. And now they're dipping the other way. Now that 1.5 million is down to about a million, a little over a million. And you'll see those numbers scale back more and more. The question is, where are Palestinians going to go? Where do Gazans go when, Rafah has to be evacuated like this? What is the consequence of this? Where do they end up? Because they're still unhoused, they're still unprotected, and they're still deeply vulnerable. And there are no safe havens. There are no shelters. There are no refugee camps. There are no, peace zones. There's nothing. And so what do you end up with? Desperation. At the same time, far-right Israeli ministers are calling for the reoccupation of Gaza and voluntary migration. Of course, this is happening as Israel marks the 76th anniversary of its founding. We also call that something, the Nakba, the Great Catastrophe, when 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly evicted from their homes or fled because of Zionist militias. I'm going to say that again. Far-right Israeli ministers are calling for the reoccupation of Gaza. They're basically saying, take it over again. And voluntary migration. Voluntary migration is a very interesting thing in the midst of a disproportionate war. It's beyond dishonest. It's beyond brutal. But I want to mention something else. In the midst of this war, we've had our eyes appropriately focused on Gaza, but I don't want to ignore the West Bank. And I feel like it's been a few weeks since I talked about what's happening in the West Bank. We're still continuing to see violence in the West Bank. We're still continuing to see settler raids in the West Bank, arrests in the West Bank, bulldozings in the West Bank. Israeli forces have arrested a Palestinian man just today after storming his home in a neighborhood in the south of Tulkarem, which is in the West Bank. The Israeli military has also arrested a man in the El Irsal neighborhood of El Bire. El Bire is not far from, it's like right next to Ramallah, and it's like the administrative, it's like an extension. Some of the administrative offices are in El Bire. It's right next to Ramallah, which of course is like, the capital of the West Bank in a certain kind of way. While a third man has been arrested in the town of Birzeit, which is north of Ramallah. And we know Birzeit from the university. Israeli raids have been reported elsewhere in the West Bank, including Azun, which is east of Qalqilia, the town of Izbad Shufa, which is near Tulkarem. And gunfire has also been reported after the Israeli military stormed the city of Nablus. There is so much happening in the West Bank. We don't want to ignore that. Obviously, what's happening in the West Bank is not the same as what's happening in Gaza, but it is no less intent, and it is no less violent, and it is no less in need of redress. So we'll continue to cover it. We'll continue to give you the updates. Right now, though, I want to thank you for watching Israel's War on Gaza report. Please hit the like button so everyone knows that this content is relevant and interesting to you. Also hit the subscribe button. Anybody on this community right now, anybody watching this video right now, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It keeps you updated with our content. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button, become a member of the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel so that you can help us build independent media, so you can help us continue to tell the truth about what's happening in Gaza, so that you can help us sustain and maintain and expand independent left-wing media. If you want to sidestep the joining process, you can just go straight to Cash App, MLHTV, $MLHTV, or Venmo at MLHTV, at MLHTV. Anything you drop will be much appreciated. We appreciate you. We love you. And we ask you now to head over to Night School. Every night, I'm going to give you a breakdown. It's not a TV show. It's not a podcast. It's a global classroom. And we appreciate everybody who checks it out. So head over here, go right over to Night School. We're going to get started in 1 minute. See you. Peace.